Oh, snap. We're getting political up in here. Hey everyone, welcome back. It's your girl Rosalie. Welcome to the Ultimate World Music Reaction Channel. I'm diving into something today, a request that was given to me. Shout out today goes to Work All the Time. And I'm going to check out something else by Tom MacDonald. I listened to one or two of his songs, I think two so far. And I think one was Sheeple, the other was Fighter, because that had just come out. But there's a whole lot of other Tom MacDonald songs that you have asked me to check out. Tom MacDonald is a very unique artist. Independent artist, has been going very far, which is impressive, doing that on your own. He is a unique character in the sense that he is not afraid to talk about heavy and hard topics. And as I saw on a snippet of an interview with him, he shares that he wants people to learn to think for themselves, where things are getting much more toxic and corrupt on the left and right, politically speaking, and I suppose in every way. He's encouraging people to think for themselves. So he likes the challenge. And In God We Trust is already an interesting title choice to me because that is the American phrase often used, right? It's on the dollar bill, it's on money here in the United States. It is something that is often said in regards to God bless America. But I think over the course of time and the more messy this nation has become, it is an interesting statement, if you will, because if you have faith that there is a God and you say, I trust in him, what does that entail? What does that mean? And of course, that's a question you have to answer for yourself. Some of you may not believe in God to begin with. Others believe in God, but you define trusting in something differently. I think the first thing that comes to mind, again, apart from the U.S. currency and that slogan in America, what I think of when I think of trust is obedience. I think when you trust someone, you can follow. Now, that doesn't mean blind obedience, but that means, for example, a child that trusts its parents, that knows what they want for them is good, will hopefully, obey and listen. But that doesn't mean we cannot ask questions, right? That would be blind obedience. But there's this relationship with trust where in the parent-child relationship, the child trusts the parent, the child is asked to obey. But hopefully there is a basis of trust, not fear. Hopefully the motivation for the child to obey and to follow instructions is not out of fear of punishment, but because they trust their parent and they're learning that there's good intentions behind this. In a love relationship, trust may look like a mutual give and take, not questioning, not being suspicious, not seeing evil when there is none. Trust will look different in various relationships. And when it comes to God, I think, again, a question you have to ask yourself. I think that there is this dance, if you will, between trusting, having faith, hoping, but at the same time understanding, in my opinion, that we have a responsibility too. And so when we bring that into a country, into politics, it becomes interesting, right? Because how much are we trusting God? How much are we actually doing what is moral and right, regardless of your religion? And how much are we taking matters into our own hand? And of said matters, how much of them are right and pure and true? We have a responsibility, even as human beings, regardless of your faith, to still do what is right. So there's a whole host of thoughts that I have, as you can see, when I hear In God We Trust. But I think it's definitely an American reference. He's originally from Canada, but I think I've been told that America claims him now. And so yes, American idea to me, In God We Trust. But what does that mean? This is a song that was put out a year ago, 15 million views. Tom MacDonald, Adam Calhoun, Struggle Jennings, and Nova Rockafeller, his girl. So I'm curious to see what they did here. Are you ready? Okay. As always, subscribe. Check out the links in the description below. And here we go. Okay. Sorry. I'm being a goof right now. Here we go.
They separate us from our neighbors and they call it social distancing. It's actually a bigger plan, it's called social conditioning. They took away our privacy, there's always someone listening. The elections planning riots for the citizens. The government has always lied, it's history repeating. But the problem is the schools dumb you down so you believe them. If you try to speak the truth inside a tweet, then they delete it. Whole administration Satanists who claim they praise in Jesus. Every year there's a new name for enemies that we're facing. It's Al-Qaeda, then ISIS, and now American patriots. Who would have thought those who love the country the most would be hated on by folks who call America home? Both political parties are equally just as evil. They've been working for themselves, don't give a damn about the people. Black, white, yellow, brown, humanity needs you. Cause united we stand, divided they will defeat you. The man on the news says the problem is me. I'm just a small town boy with big
Y'all missing what was written in them pages. That was history they wrote, now you wanna change it. You racist, you hate this. Why you want us all to be locked up in cages? I can't stand the left, everything they say's depressing. Ship them to the Middle East, they can learn oppression. Believe me, I mean this quite literal. I love liberty, but I liberals. Wear a mask, stay home, complain and moan. Talk about privilege on your phone in your Range Rover, Starbucks, mango, foo-foo, whatever. The cloth I'm cut from can handle any weather. You just paper in the rain, we ain't the same. Stand for the flag, only kneel when I pray. I just pray we go back to the old days, land of the free, home of the brave.
The man on the news says the problem is me. I'm just a small town boy with big American dreams. The world's going crazy and they lying to us. Don't know who to believe, so in God we trust.
Yeah. I see through all the illusions, refuse to humor rumors or accept that we're losing. Easy to get caught up, consumed by the consumer. Truth is so diluted, people starve off the confusion. Comfort is the killer, your dreams execution. Cool with persecution if I make a contribution. Home of the brave look like a mental institution, and there will be revolution if we can't find resolution. And a threat is a promise, stand up, pay homage. They tell lies, I'm being honest, test of time is upon us. I know that God got us, so I'm fighting in his honor. Hear the cries of the crusaders as we're strapping up our armor. Either set sail to higher ground or drown in they drama. If I die for what I love, then my death will be nirvana. We fighting for our freedom, don't believe what they've been feeding. Be the change you wanna see, the warrior that we're needing.
The man on the news says the problem.
Okay, I'm gonna pause for just a second. Tom MacDonald, I know him. Adam Calhoun has a really cool voice. He's a rapper also. And I don't know his work, but he's an American rapper, singer, songwriter, and comedian. Active social media personality. But he has a neat voice. And then Struggle Jennings, he has a very dope voice. There's a lot of rasp there, a lot of texture. I like that. And so having all those guys and then the beautiful Nova Rockafeller together and her singing in unison, singing the melody here with Tom MacDonald in the chorus is cool. We'll talk about the lyrics in a second. There's a couple of parts where I'm like, oh snap, wow, they said that. And I think if you just know kind of what's going on culturally and even what's swapping over to some other countries, if I feel from America, I think you can kind of see what they're referring to. But it's interesting to talk about In God We Trust, referring to a lot of that American stuff going on culturally and politically. Let's keep going.
Be the change you want to see, the warrior that we're needing.
The man on the news says the problem is me. I'm just a small town boy with big American dreams. The world's going crazy and they lying to us. Don't know who to believe, so in God we trust.
We don't trust the news, the government, or pharma. We just want freedom, that you have that to offer. We don't want the lies, the politics, or the drama. We just want the life that was promised by our fathers. We don't trust the news, the government, or pharma. We just want freedom, that you have that to offer. We don't want the lies, the politics, or the drama. We just want the life that was promised by our fathers.
The man on the news says the problem is me. I'm just a small town boy with big American dreams. The world's going crazy and they lying to us. Don't know who to believe, so in God we trust.
Okay. Interesting. I don't know who to believe in God, so in God we trust. Right, going back to can't believe people. Obviously, both the left and right and the politics are there to separate and divide. So I'm going to trust in God, which is interesting because, again, that's that American slogan, if you will, in God we trust, or God bless America. Interesting. I don't know where to start. They separate us from our neighbors. They call it social distancing. It's a bigger plan. It's called social conditioning. And so he's talking about these different things: rigging elections, government lying, the truth being deleted if you post something in a tweet, administration Satanists who claim they're praising Jesus. Interesting, right? Since that song is titled In God We Trust. So calling out that hypocrisy. Every year there's a new name for enemies we're facing: Al-Qaeda, ISIS, now American patriots. Entitled, United We Stand, Divided They Will Defeat You. I think he said that in one of his other songs as well. The man on the news says the problem is me. I'm just a small town boy with big American dreams. And the tag here, the hook, not the tag, I'm sorry, the hook, the melody here is very catchy. La 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 la. Like it's easy to sing along, right? This makes it for a really radio-worthy, catchy hook. Easy to remember and sing along to. And then the different phrases and stanzas of this, well, it's not a poem, but of this song, which is very close to poetry often. We won't go into every one of them, but it speaks of the politics. It speaks of y'all missing what was written in them pages. That was history they wrote. Now you want to change it. Interesting, right? Because what was written could also be a reference to the Bible, scripture, right? Because we're speaking of God. But it also refers to, obviously, here history being erased. You're racist, you hate this, while you want us all to be locked up in cages. I can't stand the left, everything they say is depressing. Ship them to the Middle East, they can learn oppression. Believe me, I mean this quite literal. I love liberty, but I hate white liberals. Oh, snap. We're getting political up in here. I want to say something real quick about that part, the whole history being rewritten. I think there's two sides to this. On one hand, I think it's very important we don't erase history because how are we going to learn from it? And not just for us. You can Google a lot nowadays, but because of the corruption in the world, you can't trust what's on the internet, right? You're going to have people even controlling what gets posted and deleted and shared. So you can't trust it's all unbiased. It all depends on who you listen to. And then you got to dig deep enough to find someone fairly neutral. And then they might not be neutral down the road because they've been bought off. You never know. So sure, we and future generations can Google things, but it's one thing to have the internet, which again is hard to trust. And it's another thing to have something written black on white in a historically protected document somewhere in a museum. So I think it's important not just to erase history because, as they say, and I think there's validity to that, that's how we often end up repeating it. We have to know. However, I think the flip side of this, and I think a lot of these topics are a both and discussion. There's a difference to me between saying, okay, we don't want to just erase history, right? Put it in a museum. Let people remember what was done, what happened. But there's a difference to me between having a bridge or a monument erected in the name of someone who was very corrupt and evil and then saying we need to let that stand because it's history. Those are two different things. And I had an interesting conversation with my husband about this. If we don't want to take down history, because again, it's important not to forget it lest we repeat it, then let's put it in the museum. But if someone was a blatant racist, was horrible, killed people, like we know this from history books, it's proven, we have said black and white evidence, they shouldn't have the chance to live on in people's memories as an honored member of society by having their name on a bridge and having streets named after them, okay? It's not okay in my opinion. There are so many people that have in the past and in current times done so many wonderful things. Let's honor them. Let's name streets and bridges and monuments after people that have done good. And if someone was really corrupt and has done horrible things, they shouldn't have the honor of leaving a legacy in history, of living on. We talk about death often and existential fears and rippling into the future and leaving a memory and living on through that, if you will. They shouldn't have that right if they made horrible choices in this life to now be praised, if you will, and honored. But again, just tearing down every statue that has some questionable element is also the other extreme. I think maybe for certain statues, bridges, monuments that were erected in the name of someone who was blatantly evil, maybe those need to be put in the museum or something needs to be recorded in history books and in museums so we can say, oh, we need to remember who that was and what they did and what happened here so we don't ever do that again, but not to honor them. So there's a difference to me between remembering history and honoring said people. And I think that's a case-by-case situation. And I think that's what's missing in society a lot of times is we don't look at things case by case. We either say it's this or it's that versus going, okay, let's look at the situation. Let's look at what's going on here. Because the problem is with our fast-paced life right now, a lot of people, unless you're in like a specific college program or you're in a school, a lot of people won't stop to go, okay, so what actually happened here? They'll see these statues, they'll see the bridges, they'll walk by, they'll live their life. Kids don't care about a lot of that stuff, right? You go to some type of trip to the museum, most of the time as a kid, unless you're like the smart nerd that wants to learn, you're not going to pay attention to what the tour guide or teacher is teaching you. So most people, even as adults, are too busy to go, okay, interesting, this is a piece of history here. Let me look at the details. Let me look at where this came from and what happened here and who this was and what I can learn from it to do better in the future. So it's always a case by case when it comes to that, just as a side note. When it speaks of deleting tweets and things being us being divided, I 100% agree with that. And I think that's a very scary place to be. And I understand why that triggers many people's existential fears. To go, wait a minute, don't take away what my forefathers have fought for. Don't take away what I long for. Freedom is a incredibly valuable currency, for lack of a better word, an incredibly valuable gift. And when people feel threatened, even if it's a perceived threat and it's not necessarily real. Sometimes it is real, and the other side is in denial of how real the threat actually is. When people feel like their freedom is at stake because they're being silenced, they're being mocked, they're being ridiculed, they're being shamed for having a different opinion, it's understandable that many will be triggered. And by trigger, I don't say that lightly, like, oh, you're just triggered. I mean that genuinely, like there's something in them that evokes strong emotions of defensiveness and anger and frustrations, because most of us want justice. And that's why you have all these different sides, because ultimately most people want to be seen and heard. Do we even exist if we're not seen, right? Did a tree really fall if it fell in the forest and nobody saw it fall, right? So we look for acknowledgement. We want to be heard. We want to be taken serious. And when it comes to a perceived injustice, that's why people get angry. That's why people scream all the louder, because they want to be heard. But sometimes we have to take enough time to hear each other out and look deep enough and say, where's this coming from? And for those who want freedom, who speak of wanting liberty and not wanting to be oppressed, I think underneath that fight for justice, there is a fear of that being taken away, a fear of being silenced, right? Just as much as the other side has a fear of not being included and not being heard. We all want to be heard. We all want to be seen. We want to exist and matter. Wear a mask, stay home, complain and moan, talk about privilege on your phone and your Range Rover. Now that's also interesting. I have to agree with that. Sometimes it's interesting how those who scream the loudest in regards to social injustices or issues, they're doing so as they're typing from their, smartphones that were possibly put together by child labor in another country, right? There's a little bit of that irony, right? Where some people call it, selective outrage. We'll get very angry about something. And often I think, and this applies to many of us, including myself, we don't realize our own hypocrisy. And it's understandable we're more passionate about some things than others. I mean, we can't be passionate about everything to the same degree at the same time. It's just not possible. You have to have those who are passionate about saving animals, and you have to have those who fight for little babies, and you have to have those who care for veterans, and you have to have those who care for women's rights, and those who stand up for men. Right? We all need that. So it's not right to say, oh, you should care about my cause to the same degree I do. No, we all need to bring in our unique gifting and our own unique passions so we can make this world a better place, which later I think they also speak of that being the change you want to see. But there is sometimes this irony and selective outrage and hypocrisy within us humans that will get angry and will judge everybody else instead of just fighting in the right way for our own cause and helping those in need, right? If we truly care about some of these issues, how much are we actually doing to help those people to make it better? Posting about it on social media, and I've been guilty of this, right? Saying what I feel and think. It makes us feel good. It doesn't change the situation. We're heard. We exist. We matter in that moment. And we feel good if people like and share it. But what have we actually done to actually fix that cause? And so there is that selective outrage that I see as well, or the hypocrisy of, complaining about certain things from our fancy phones and our nice cars. Starbucks, mango, foo, whatever. The clothes I'm cut from can handle any weather. You're just paper in the rain. We ain't the same. Stand for the flag. Only kneel when I pray. And that's that reference to kneeling during the national anthem to raise awareness for Black Lives Matter, I think, and for minorities being oppressed. And so I think there's a whole lot of definitely calling out certain very recent issues, be it the wearing the mask and social distancing, the pandemic that caused a lot of division, the kneeling with the flag, right? Those who say that's a shame, you don't kneel with the American flag. We got to love our country. There's that patriotism. And then there's the flip side of those who say, no, I'm going to take a stand by not taking a stand to bring attention to this cause. There's a lot of things, the older I get, where I feel it's a both and situation. I think America is a very special country. As an immigrant, I think there are things here, privileges and rights we have here that you don't find in other countries. That doesn't mean it's perfect, contrarily. And there was one part where they said to get back to the good old days or something like that. And I thought to myself, reminds me a little bit of this idea of, make it great again. And there were good things in the past, in the present, and hopefully in the future. In every country, in every season of life, there were, and will be good things. But there was also a whole lot of crap. So just to say, I want to get back to that place, I think is also not quite accurate, because it always depends on who you ask. Okay. If you were to ask Martin Luther King or Malcolm X, you want to go back to the good old days. They didn't have good old days, not in this country. But then, it depends on who you ask, and both experiences matter. The little boy that has big American dreams shouldn't be shamed for what he looks like and where he comes from. That mindset of demonizing people groups, no matter what they look like and where they come from, is the same idea. And that's where, and I mentioned this in another video, where we try to be inclusive and we swing to the other extreme of excluding people that disagree with us. We preach tolerance so much that we swing all the way around to now not tolerating those who disagree. And the same goes for any ism and any phobia. You name it, right? We want to be included. We want to love. We want to care for others. And that's right. But then if we're not careful, who said this? We become so open-minded, our brains fall out. Amala Ekpunobi. She's a YouTuber, and she has some very, in my opinion, holistic views on a lot of things, where she shows compassion and kindness, but she has a lot of common sense. And she mentioned that, and I probably heard that from somewhere else. I think I've heard that saying before, right? But we want to be open-minded and inclusive, and we swing so far all the other way around, our brains fall off, and now we uphold feelings over reality. It gets tricky. And the same thing goes with politics. The same thing goes with every topic mentioned here, is that it's really not just one or the other, this side or that side. You can't say to someone who has been hurting or has generational trauma from forefathers who've suffered to say, we got to go back to those good old days. They didn't have that. So to them, that would be insulting. But then to demonize someone who says, I want to get back to the good old days because they long for freedom, they long for a more simpler life, that too shouldn't be shunned and dismissed, right? Why do we do that? Did we demonize one people group? History moves past that, more or less, and things get better. Now we're becoming more equal, and then we go back to the other extreme, where now we say we have to demonize the other side. Neither is correct. No matter your skin color, no matter where you're from or who you are, you're not the devil. And I think important to note here, because it says the world's going crazy and they're lying to us, and I agree with that. Don't know who to believe, so in God we trust. I think there is validity in that, understanding. If you can't trust in people and believe in people, you don't know who to believe because it's all a mess. In God we trust. Because hopefully, right, if you believe in God in a certain way, you believe that He is loving, that He loves all people, and that He is good, and that He has good plans, that He can be trusted. Someone that can be trusted means they're not going to betray you, they're not going to play you, they're not going to divide you. And it's that play on that American slogan. So basically, I suppose, to go back to those old days, right, where the idea was, let's be a nation that trusts in God, where people have freedoms, where we have rights, right, all the different amendments in the Constitution. I think when it comes to trusting God, and not just, the American slogan, but literally, there's this duality there of having faith that things can get better, trusting in God, and learning from those principles we find in Christianity and Islam, moral, ethical, right, regardless if you are a person of faith, you believe or not believe in those theologies and systems of faith. We can learn from them moral, ethical values, and there is action that needs to be taken as people. So there needs to be that faith in God, that trust in God needs to show itself with how we treat one another. I think sometimes there's way too little focus on our responsibility as human beings with how to take care of this planet and how to treat one another. But I'm going deep. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below what you thought about this one. Subscribe, Check out my links in the description, and I'll see you on the next ride. Ayo!